Dragonstorm's been out for 3 or 4 days now. I've done a bunch of drafts, I've been having a lot of fun, and I just want to do like an early appraisal video talking about what I think works, what doesn't, and just my general thoughts. I am probably going to get right back to drafting after this video, which gives you an idea of how much fun I'm having. So I've done a grand total of 16 drafts now. I started at the bottom of gold. I've just squeaked my way into diamond. 58% win rate, which is fine, nothing crazy. You'll see I've tried a bunch of different stuff, from like mostly 2-color aggro all the way up to greedy 5-color stuff, and surprisingly I still haven't actually drafted Jeskai. I've just kind of not really gotten there, but I'll go through my personal experiences a little bit more in a bit. But I just want to set the scene going into the draft releasing. With early access happening, quite a lot of content creators were giving their initial impressions. They think this format is going to be quite slow, and they're worried that aggro isn't really going to be functional because there's too much good fixing, there's too many powerful gold cards, and it might just be a race to the most soupy 5-color dragon deck you can make. And this was also exacerbated by the social media posts by Ben Wise, who is the senior game designer at Wizards. I'll not go through the full thread, but he does detail some changes they had to make to Mardu through design to try and keep this fantasy of casting dragons. The whole set is about dragons. They want people to be able to safely cast them and have fun casting them. So they can't have aggro be too strong. Mardu initially actually had menace on all of its tokens, and that was way too good, as well as they had a trumpet blast effect at common. All of that added up to too much consistent beating going on. Instead, they decided to add benefits to going wide and specific combat tricks to help you push through damage. So you need to be a little bit smarter about how you're drafting the aggro deck. So going into this format, me and my friends were also concerned that this is what was going to happen, that aggro was going to be too weak and it was just going to be a race to who could be the greediest possible. Well, if we look at the 17 lands data for colors after 3 days, we have a very rough initial impression that all the clans are actually pretty damn close together, between 54 and 56%, which is great. And in fact, by these numbers, Mardu is the best. As is usually the case, if you can get it down to a small number of colors, your deck is probably going to be more consistent, and that can help your win rate. But if we look down here, you've got red, green, blue with an extra splash, and that also has an extremely high win rate. General caveat, this is only 3 days of data, and on top of that, 17 lines just updated, so even less people than normal are actually adding into this data pool. But we're just here for early vibes. So one of the interesting things about drafting this format is that you have to do it differently to any of the sets in recent memory, because you want to be in one of these 5 wedges, because the gold cards are extremely strong and they're worth your effort. So ideally you want to be 2-color with a splash of a 3rd color in your wedge. When drafting, what you want to do is pick an enemy 2-color pair, for example white-black, and then you want to add in the complementary extra color. In this case, you would add either green to make Abzan, or you would add red to make Mardu, and you would do your best to avoid the blue cards. It's a lot easier to get fixing within a complementary wedge than it is to get it out of it, so there is a big leap between being 3 or 4 color and then 5 color. What this means is that I'm still a little bit unsure what my pick hierarchy is. I've just kind of been going with bombs and then like fixing in good cards and then everything else. But there is an argument to picking good monocolored cards, staying in an enemy 2-color, and then picking up fixing as you go, and then getting past the relevant bombs for the wedge that you are in that is now open. So as the format develops, we'll probably see what makes most sense. Right now, it seems that people are being quite greedy and maybe not picking up quite as much fixing as they should be, but it also can be harder to read what's open in some of these drafts. But I would stress it is definitely worth your time to try and be base 2-color and then splash off that. You really ideally don't want to be evenly in 3 colors. However, I will show later some examples of people with horrific mana bases, myself included, who are winning despite that. Just to emphasize how powerful cards are in this set, I'm just going to quickly go back to DFT. The card that everyone complained about there was Sabsunan, which has a game in hand win rate of almost 68%. Best card out of all of these, and it was really hard to answer, basically won you on the spot. That's where we're at. Go to Tarkir, Dragonstorm, and we have 4 or 5 cards that are as good as the Frog God. We've got Ugin, Jeskai Revelation, we've got Rennie, Dragonback Assault, River Regent, Elspeth. These cards are, it's very hard to lose after you cast them. Personally, I have had a lot of fun casting a Rennie, and I've had a lot of not fun having Jeskai Revelation cast at me. And you'll see here that there's just a glut of gold cards here with really high win rates. you're heavily incentivized to play 3 colors. If we cut down just to the commons and uncommons, it's interesting to look at a few things. So you'll see that a lot of the monuments have very good win rates, and especially you'll see here the 2 monuments that are not green have the highest win rates because those shards have more trouble fixing. It's more important for them that they get the fixing than the green wedges that have those other options. And I think that's another reason why the Mardu devotee is so high. Looking at the common and uncommons that are doing well, the very interesting one is the Sibsig Appraiser. It is above most uncommons. It has an insane win rate for a common. And what it's doing here is just helping you fix, hit your land drops, get more cards. And you would assume that because it has graveyard synergy, maybe it would be best in, say, Sultai. But interestingly, it seems to be performing better in Izzet with a splash than Simic with a splash. But then if we go to the green commons that fix, like the Wayfarer here and also the Sagu Wildling, it seems that they prefer to be in blue-green with a splash rather than, say, black-green with a splash. I don't know if that's because they're best bases for going into 4 and 5 color or if it just suits them better, but they seem to be winning more in that color combination. Because these bombs are so bomby and they have value as soon as they enter the battlefield, it's not possible to answer these spells 1 for 1 unless you're counterspelling. So a few of the blue commons and uncommons are really good here. Dispelling Exile, Spectral Denial, and also Riverwalk Technique are really good. I've played quite a bit of each of the cards and I've pretty much always been very happy to have them. When everyone's casting really busted gold cards on 3, being able to 2-cost counterspell somebody is huge game. And then even if you draw it later, people are tapping out for expensive spells. So being able to counter for 2 or 4 is usually enough. And you'll see how important it is to just hit your colors and your land drops, because a lot of these top green cards are fixing. You've got the Wayfinder, you've got the Botanist, the Relic, and the Wildling are all here in like the top 8 or 9 green cards. So cheap card draw, good fixing, bombs, all important. Some cards that I found interesting that I think are maybe less obvious. Sarkhan's Resolve is the kind of card that you would just be chaff normally, but here being able to destroy a creature with flying is very irrelevant because most of the best cards are dragons. And +3/+3 is a totally fine combat trick. If you are trying to be 5 color, you should keep an eye out for Dragonstorm Forecaster. It seems to be quite underrated at the moment. Right now it is winning a lot when it actually gets played. Rebellious Strike doesn't have very good stats, but when I was looking through trophy lists for aggro decks, this seemed to be used quite a lot, and it was also cited in the Ben Wise tweet as a way to help token decks push through. For example, here you've got this hyper aggro 15 land Boros deck that went 7/2 in Diamond, and you just see you've got a bunch of Bearers of Glory, a bunch of Fortress Kingguard, and then a bunch of Molten Exiles, which you'll know is good, and Rebellious Strikes, interestingly enough. All this, like, it helps with flurry triggers, and it also just helps, you know, pushing through damage. I was quite surprised to see that Aggressive Negotiations has a decent win rate, is one of the better black commons, but because this format is so bomb driven, maybe just having a chance to get these crazy cards out of people's hands is enough, and there is very little in the way of this type of effect in the set. Krumar Initiate is an interesting one. It has very bad win rate initially. Currently though, I'm thinking it's a skill issue, because this card has been very good for me and I kind of have trouble seeing how it could be bad. I think it's just that maybe people are putting it in their Mardu aggro decks when they shouldn't be, or they're putting it in their Sultai decks when maybe they shouldn't be. It is pretty much an Abzan card. The ability to just play this on 2 and then start making guys, if your opponent is being greedy and is not pressuring you, there is so much value here. It's also Flood Insurance, plays amazingly with other fight spells. There's a lot of stuff that it does really nicely. At the worst, it's a 2/2 that eats a removal spell or trades off with something. Right now, I'm just surprised that it has such a bad win rate. Going over my couple of trophy decks, this was the first one, which was just purely Sultai. Although it has a few rares in it, it's kind of lacking big, powerful top end. It mostly got there by being very consistent at finding stuff through Dragonologist. I really enjoyed the combo of Essence Anchor plus Aegis Sculptor. So Essence Anchor will just let you surveil each turn, and then if a card leaves your graveyard, you can tap it to make a zombie. Aegis Sculptor, every upkeep, you can remove 2 cards and then grow it, which then obviously allows you to make the zombie with the Essence Anchor. So it made for a nice little combo there. And the 2 Dispelling Exiles and the Roiling Dragonstorms were just amazing at making the deck function. So although this doesn't have the crazy top end that you would probably want, it was just very consistent and solid. And also it was like blue-black base with some green, so the mana actually ended up working out pretty well here. And then in contrast to that, this Abzan list that I trophied with just before recording this has no dual lands. because I was taking speculative dual lands in other colors and I never actually got around to taking them in the colors I was in. But I've got a little bit of fixing. I've got Sagu, I've got Wayfinder, but it's definitely below your recommended amount. You never want to be registering 665. This deck had a little bit more late game beef to it. We've got a slightly higher mana curve, big chunky creatures, and it could actually construct some pretty aggressive draws. Synchronized Charge after like a 2 or 3 drop, and then having Teeming Dragonstorm or Rally the Monastery to finish things off was definitely very real. This was actually my first draft in the format, and you see that I'm going here for this very greedy strategy that I was telling you about. I'm like, give me all the Mammoth Bellows, give me a bunch of 5 drops. What's a 3 drop? I don't understand. Removal and counter spells. And I just got like rolled over by aggro and flyers flying over my elephants, and it wasn't a very good time. I mentioned it briefly earlier, but this is the deck that my friend played that is 5 color base Mardu, almost no fixing. The fixing was like Embermouth Sentinel, and I think that's about it. They're playing a Maelstrom of the Spirit Dragon, which only fixes for dragons. They're playing 1 green source, and they have a bunch of rare lands that only produce 1 color, and it's all kind of hurts my head when I look at it, and I don't want to sit down and count all the color sources, but I'm sure that there's something wrong here. However, they managed to go 7-0 with this in plat. So what do I know? Better lucky than good, better vibes than maths. But you can see that there's definitely something here. You absolutely need the power. Ideally, you get the fixing, but if you don't, hey, at least you have the power, so you just have to get lucky with your draws on your lands. Below that, you need answers to their bombs as best as you can find them. Ideally, things like counter spells or just efficient removal will get you there, and then fill in afterwards, ideally with things that will just help you either draw cards so you can draw your bombs faster, or play your lands and fix your lands so that you can more consistently cast them. And that seems to be long and short of the format. I have been having a lot of fun. I think people I've been seeing online have been feeling the same way. I'm glad that aggro does seem to be functional, if a little bit harder to draft. And I'm impressed that they managed to design a format where it does just feel great to cast dragons. So congratulations on that one play design team. That's it for me yapping. Let me know below how you've been finding the set, if you found this helpful at all or interesting. I didn't want to give some kind of this is how to draft video because, as you can see, I think it's very open, and there are some things that you shouldn't do, but there isn't just like white's terrible in this draft set, ignore it, play these colors, because they've actually done a very good job, it seems. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.